while there's many people that love driving these vehicles, there's vastly amounts of more people that just want to continue driving reliable internal combustion vehicles. Let's just take it right from the top. The first reason is the development, the research, the battery costs, of course, all contribute, of course, into the increased cost. So when you're buying an electric vehicle, you're going to spend 15, 20, 25, maybe 30% more for the same vehicle. A vehicle that looks like this in the Audi world, but to do it in an electrified state is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars more because you're paying for all that research, development, technology that goes into that. Remember, they're starting this game from scratch, so it's costing them. Brands like Tesla are managed to stay afloat and do it somewhat competitively is strictly because they skip the dealer network and they sell directly to customer. But it's still a very expensive proposition, and the upfront costs are a major reason why you're going to spend more, and probably a lot of people choose not to buy electric cars. Another reason simply is this. You walk up here, and these are actually harder to find than you would believe. Here's a charge station. We have a flow, and sometimes the supercharger network for Tesla are harder to come by. Here, you're always tethering your car up. And it's this whole idea of trying to get a hold of a charger is going to be a constant battle. That's why they call it range anxiety for a reason, because every mile that you drive down the road is another mile that you're worried about. Oh no, you're watching that ticking down, and you know it's not just a gas station around the corner. You have to be always aware of where your charging stations are, where that network is. And it's fine if you're a city dweller, and if you're somebody who just does short trips in the city, that's fine. Most major cities have lots of charge stations, but there is a reality. Shortages of a lot of these charge stations mean that range anxiety is a real issue, and charger anxiety, and be able to find a charger that is actually working. Because there's also lots of cases now where people pull up, they see on the front screen it tells them through their navigation system where they should go to the next charge station, and there's cases where that charger is simply out of order, damaged, broken, not working, powered down, or what have you. So it is a real anxiety, and a lot of people get stressed out about it. Another reason why a lot of people should not be considering buying electric vehicles, if you value your time or you value your money, and maybe you're a busy person on the go, if you're always worrying about how long that vehicle is to charge, then this is not the car for you, because where you get basically 3 different levels. You get level 1, which is plugging into receptacle in the side of your house. And unfortunately, that can take sometimes days. We actually had a Tesla Model 3 long range a couple of years ago, and we had it on loan. And overnight, you plug it in at the evening, 7 o'clock, you wake up in the morning and you might get 12 or 15%. Level 2 chargers, 220, and that can take you hours. 220 is something that a lot of times people mount in their houses. You need that extra capacity in your panel, and unfortunately, it takes a certified electrician to do that. If you live in an apartment, that's not going to work for you either in most cases. But generally, a 220 is a level 2, but it's going to take you hours to charge. And then the level 3 is the one that you quite often see is a fast charger. DC charger is going to aggressively put current and upgrade the charge of that battery, and it can do it anywhere, give you maybe 250 kilometers of range, maybe in about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the battery size, the type of vehicle. You're basically charged up in about a half an hour. The next point why it may not be worthy to buy an electric car is the overall infrastructure. And I sort of touched on that already, but it's harder to get these chargers. There's more of these vehicles on the road these days. So you're competing with charge times, you're competing with other drivers, and there's more and more of these on the road, and the infrastructure just isn't in place. Power systems, of course, is not there to entirely support it. I know here in Canada, we had the federal government ask us to tone it down with our HVAC systems or our air conditioning units as we hit the heat of the summer, but yet then they want everybody to be driving electric vehicles. So it really is contrary to conversation, but in most cases, it's harder to get this infrastructure. These fast chargers are fewer and far between. Again, as I've already said, if you are living in an apartment, quite often you can't plug it in, and you're gonna have to plug it into a standard 120 that you would normally use your block heater. That's gonna ultimately cost you time to get your vehicle charged, as it could take you days to charge these vehicles. Now, sure, you can hustle on down to a fast charger, but then you're sitting there, and again, typically in lineups. And when we had that Tesla a couple of years back, I do remember having to wait for probably about an hour to get access to a fast charger because there was a bit of a lineup, and that seems to be a common theme. Now there's more and more of that infrastructure coming, but we also know power systems, the infrastructure from the utilities isn't being built fast enough to support the increase in sales of electric vehicles. It means you're likely going to compete for access to a lot of those chargers. So the infrastructure is very limited currently as it stands. If you're liking the video so far, you're going to love the rest of the channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and don't forget the notifications bell so you know when the next amazing videos come. Another problem is battery costs. Now they can range anywhere from $10, $20, $30, $50,000 for replacement battery. Hybrids, a little bit less, $5,000 to $10,000, but it's the replacement cost cost of these batteries that scare people away and can be quite cost prohibitive. They do last a long time, and a lot of people say that they've seen their batteries last longer than you would expect. And so it's not the end of the world, but it's something to be thinking about. The worst part isn't necessarily the natural longevity of the battery. The problem really is more about the damage or extreme temperatures that these vehicles and these batteries get subjected to that will take a toll on these batteries. There's been many cases, we've heard cases in Canada where somebody rolled over a piece of pipe and damaged the underside. Of course, that's an anomaly, but there has been a few cases where they've damaged the batteries underneath and unexpectedly had to replace them for tens of thousands of dollars. An engine replacement is going to be expensive on a modern day internal combustion vehicle too, but generally you can plan for that and you have a much better idea of predicting the lifespan of that engine. Another consideration about buying electric vehicles comes down to tire wear. Now, a lot of, owners of electric vehicles and Teslas and so on will argue and say they don't have maintenance costs, they don't have oil changes, brake fluid flushes, and all of those types of issues because the brakes are rarely used. There are no engines that use oil changes, and clearly it's a lower cost to maintain an electric vehicle. But that's not entirely true when you consider the weight of these electric vehicles these days is substantially heavier than a regular internal combustion variant. So this vehicle in this size may add up to 1,000 pounds more or even beyond of what an internal combustion. You're dealing with a heavier duty set of tires, and of course that's going to cost you significantly more, not just in the replacement, but how quickly that they wear out. And a lot of owners and buyers of these electric vehicles find themselves actually eating through tires at an alarming rate. Now that said, of course, a lot of times it comes down to drive style, but the overall weight, there's a lot more tension and pressure down on the tires, and that's going to cost you more money, significantly more. Anybody who comes from the world of BMWs and run flats can appreciate the sticker shock you get when you have to spend the dollars to get the new replacement set. That's why a lot of people retrofit to non-run flats. Well, the problem is with an electric vehicle, you can't convert. You basically have to run what makes the vehicle safe to roll down the road, and those tires themselves are going to likely extremely offset the cost of a couple of oil changes here and there, and so the cost of changing tires is going to be something you have to be thinking about buying an electric vehicle. The next one is environmental impacts, and everybody's going to dispute this one. Big Oil is going to dispute the electric pro people, and that's okay. I'm not here to get in the middle. I will say though that the oring and mining and strip mining and tearing into the earth, of course, to find that rare minerals that need to go into some of these batteries is an extraordinarily high cost. There's a lot of emissions in that activity alone, as well as all the diesel equipment. You think of all the loaders and the heavy equipment are all run by diesel equipment naturally just to extract that product and those minerals. Of course, that costs money, and that's an environmental issue, of course, too. And another obvious one, when we're in summertime, life's good, or you live in southern states where it's warm all year round. But there's a reality of the cold weather actually having a major impact on these batteries. And, I've seen these cases where we have some Canadians that have test run some of these Teslas and have gotten a vastly reduced amount of charge and range on their vehicles to the point where sometimes in the extreme weather and parked outside, you actually had to keep it charging, and it was losing at a faster velocity than it was charging and gaining. So the extreme weather will take a major toll on the battery life of these vehicles, not just the life, but even the functionality and the range overall. And cold weather is a huge impact on any of these electric vehicles. Another drawback with electric vehicles is what this vehicle actually provides. Great engine sounds. This provides some of the best engine sounds. They actually call it the mini Lamborghini because it actually sounds amazing. This turbocharged 5-cylinder engine rumbles, howls, and makes some amazing noises. But that unfortunately is something you're going to miss with an electric vehicle, because a lot of these vehicles here, even if you're not going for the fire-breathing hot rod there, any of these just have that shake, that vibration to sort of let you know it's alive. And there's sort of an eeriness about driving an electric vehicle that it doesn't feel alive until you put your foot into it. You don't get that great engine sound that a lot of people love about the internal combustion vehicle. And if you love any of that, then you're definitely going to miss it driving an electric car. And with all of that said, be sure to check out that video. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.